This is episode 760 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing. I'm president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. I am very pleased to be joined for this episode by Joe DiGangi. He is the man behind the billboards that really, I think, in many ways, rocked New Mexico government in the Balloon Fiesta time period, where he called out New Mexico's national rankings in education and crime. And I saw those billboards and said, I need to talk to this man on Tipping Point, New Mexico. So here he is. Joe, welcome to Tipping Point, New Mexico.
Great. Thanks. I appreciate being here.
Hey, I appreciate you and what you've done to call out the myriad failures of New Mexico government. But before we get into the billboards themselves and some of those aspects of it, tell us just a little bit about yourself. I know you told me you split time between Florida and New Mexico. Is that where you're originally from? What's your kind of background and just whatever you want to tell us?
Well, born and raised in Connecticut, back east. Moved to New Mexico with my wife, Dina, who's in the education system.
Okay.
In New Mexico.
So you have some first-time experience, or first-hand experience, I should say.
Very much so. And we moved here 40 years ago. I did art shows. I actually a craftsman more than a art, like painting. I made handmade cutlery, carving sets, steak knives. Did the Smithsonian Museum, Philadelphia Museum of Art, that level of craft show for 20-something years. Employed folks from Rio Arriba County, where we have been for 30 years, and just recently moved up to the Chama area on the Colorado border. I love New Mexico. I loved it. I actually passed through here once in '65 and thought I should come back. So we both moved here in 1985, lived in Rio Arriba County, and then recently, I would say 10 years ago, decided that we could use a warmer winter.
Right.
So we have a place on the west coast of Florida, and that's where I'm headed after this for the winter. But I'll be doing all this online, on phone. And why did I start this? Because I care, and because I am in business for myself since I was 13 years old. And I realized first thing you have to do is admit you have a problem.
Right.
If you're in last place in your business, it's not working. If you're average, well, you're average. I prefer to be at the top of the list rather than the middle or the bottom. So you admit you have a mistake, then you have to sit down and figure out exactly what the problem is. And then the third thing is you have to do the work to solve the problem. If you just say we have a problem, it means nothing.
Right. So you, just to clarify, you split your time between northern New Mexico, currently Chama area, and Florida. Those are two just wildly disparate areas in terms of every aspect of them.
The one thing they have in common is in the summer in Chama, it's 75 degrees, and in Florida in the winter, it's 75 degrees.
There you go.
And that's my license plate says endless summer.
Nice. Well, you're still professionally active? You're not retired, or are you retired?
I've been retired after around '07. That was when I made my last knife, and we went to Florida and looked around. And then when we came back driving through Santa Fe, I noticed all the pinon trees were dead. In the whole summer that we were gone, suddenly they got a bark beetle disease.
Right.
So I called around here, there, and everywhere, and I thought, well, what are you going to do with 152,000 acres of dead pinon trees in Santa Fe County. Fire department didn't have the money. Forestry didn't even want to talk about it. So I thought, well, who would benefit from eradicating the dead trees? And my background is also in real estate, so I thought, I call and I talked to some developers, and they said, well, we've already hired people, and they're charging us $21 a tree to cut them down, put them on a trailer, and drag them to the landfill. And I thought, 152,000 acres is a lot of dead trees. So I bought a machine out of Wisconsin because I understand forestry, and talked to the people who do that for a living and said, this is the problem. What's the solution? And they said, oh, it's called a whole tree mulcher. And you just drive up to the dead pinon, one man, one machine. You lift the head up, all hydraulic, and grind the dead tree down, and then rotor-till all the organic matter into the soil. And where I live in northern New Mexico, there is no organic matter in the soil. Isn't it much in Albuquerque either?
Right.
So I did that, and they said, well, it can't be done. And I said, well, let me just bring the machine down. It's a 40,000-pound, gigantic, wide-load machine.
Sure.
And I said, let me bring it down on my dime. I'll show you what I can do in 15 minutes. If you don't like it, then I'll go home and explain to my wife why I spent $200,000 on a complete failure. And I did about 7 minutes, and they just signaled, go on, go on. And I did 147 acres there. Long story short, the next 3 years, I never transported the machine. They just cut the fence between the highway around Santa Fe, 599, all the way to Las Campanas. And I did 7 big jobs, and then a really big player came up and said, I've been watching you for 2 summers. Everything you said you would do, you did. I got a little place I need clearance, so we went to his place. And I said, well, this doesn't look little. How big is it? And he said, it's 800 acres. And I said, okie dokie. And I started on Memorial Day, hired my son. We hot seated the machine and finished on Labor Day. And then I sold the machines a week after Labor Day. And that's it.
Well, you don't sound like a guy that's sitting around idly hanging out very often. You're putting your retirement to work, and obviously driving quite a long distance between Chama, New Mexico, and the west coast of Florida. And before we get into the Billboards and what caused you to take them out, just some observations of your own between the governance of Florida, one of the most successful, conservative, free market, no income tax, just a very go get 'em growing government there in Florida and New Mexico. Any top line thoughts you want to share?
Well, Florida is a go get 'em state, and there are way too many people there for me, which is why I live in a very small town on the water in Punta Gorda, Florida. 12,000 people. It's a national landmark town, cobblestone streets and gas lamps, and very nice people. And New Mexico, very nice people. Talk about a lot getting done, but it just doesn't get done. And I guess if you were really to scratch the dirt, I'm a get her done guy. If you don't get it done, then you're just talking about it. And if you're just dreaming about it, you're probably not even talking about it. My father played for the New York Yankees in 1933, and I asked him, well, at 18 years old, how did you decide to try and become a Yankee? And he said, it was a dream. And I said, well, how did you do it? He said, I took the subway in 1933 to Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, which he had never done. No one went that far back in those days. And he knocked on the door of the manager's office inside Yankee Stadium and said, yeah, I'd like to be a catcher. And they went, oh, that's sweet, but we already have Bill Dickey, the world's best catcher. So anyway, the reason for bringing that up is, I guess I learned from him, you have the dream, then you do the work. If you don't do the work, you're just a daydreamer.
All right. Well,
And
right.
just a real quick thing, back to your original thing on a question on Florida. Yeah, they spend less money than we do, and they're much further ahead in education. They have, I mean, what's the population of New Mexico? It's
a little over 2 million.
Yeah, it's like 2.7 million. I think there's 11 million in Broward and Dade County. Way too many people for me, so that's why I don't even go to the East Coast. But yeah, they managed to teach their kids. I mean, that's a fact. In fact, in 1957, my father moved us from Connecticut for one season to Florida, and at the time, I was in like 7th grade, and I thought the schools in Florida were way behind Connecticut, and they actually still are, but they're infinitely way ahead of New Mexico. And they're one of 16 states that spend less money than we do and are infinitely higher on the national rankings.
Right. Yeah, we've done a lot of research actually on Florida at the Rio Grande Foundation to specifically explain some of those factors. But let's get on to the billboards that you put up during the recent Balloon Fiesta here in Albuquerque. And it's very simple. You have big letters saying something to the effect that New Mexico is, ranked dead last in education and has the highest crime and drug use. Why can't we do better? You have a website. You've now maybe transitioned that website to makenewmexicobetter.org. So folks can find Joe's website there, makenewmexicobetter.org. But ultimately, something must have stuck in your craw along the way, and you decided you're going to spend your own money to put these up specifically during Balloon Fiesta. What was there a straw that broke the camel's back, or was it just the cumulative nature of things?
And the cumulative broke the camel's back. After 40 years, when we moved here, New Mexico was always somewhere between 47th, 48th, and 49th, or dead last in education. As I mentioned, my wife was in the Rio Arriba school system for several years. And 40 years ago, 47th, 48th, 49th. For the last 9 years, we've been 50th. And that somehow came to my attention because I tend to just kind of peruse this and that. And I thought, my goodness, in 40 years, we went from second or third to last to dead last. That's not much of an improvement. And I had a business in Rio Arriba County, and I had employees, and I knew that they weren't doing as well as the national average in their education. Well-meaning, good guys, all the rest, good families, didn't have the proper education to advance. So back in February of this year, I just ran across something that triggered it, and I created a LLC called Land-of-Enchantment LLC in Florida. And of course, when you file an LLC, they ask you what the charter is. What are you going to be doing? And I said, well, the only thing I'm going to be doing is providing public service announcements. And that's what I'm doing. And I'm staying within that charter. I'm not proposing or purporting that I can fix it all. But what I can do is make the public aware that we have problems. And I started off with those billboards at the Balloon Fiesta time. There's 2 of them that are still up They suspected and hoped that I was taking the billboards down on the 12th. I'm not sure where they got that information, but there's still two on Interstate 40 of the original Land of Enchantment, which says lowest in education, highest in crime and drug use. And they're on I-40 east and west of Albuquerque. One's in Grants, one's in Moriarty. So you can't pass through Albuquerque without noticing these 40 and 48-foot yellow billboards that were designed around the color scheme of our original license plates.
Right, red with yellow field, red writing, and then black. So they are very noticeable. I noticed one near my house on the west side, and I haven't been driving outside of Albuquerque recently, so I haven't seen that one, but or those. But you obviously care deeply about this. You got on Channel 13, not once, but twice, and we'll talk a little bit about the second time and why that happened. But did you actively try to share your message with various news outlets and send out press releases? Did you just kind of do it and they tracked you down? How did that whole process work?
Yeah, excuse me. I started them during the Balloon Fiesta. Because I've lived here 40 years and I know how big the Balloon Fiesta is. And I know that the powers to be always say that we get 800,000 or 1 million people. And I thought, well, this would be a pretty good time to make a statement. And it wasn't that I was trying to be malicious or mean. I was trying to reach the largest audience. You know, if you have the money and you're buying ads on television, you buy a Super Bowl ad because that's the one show that the most people watch. The Balloon Fiesta is our biggest event. So I thought I'd start with that. And I put it up, and I had, prior to them being on display, put out 100 press releases, national, statewide, Texas, Colorado, Arizona, and received 0 responses. Once the boards went up, and everyone was a little bit startled, then KRQE called me, KOB called me, KOT just called me recently. We did the interview, and the irony of the first interview, and they said, where are the nearest boards? And I pointed to the one on Central, which is right across the gate from, what do they call it, the Expo.
Right,
And I
the
thought,
state
well,
fairgrounds.
The big fairgrounds, and they were having the fair. And I thought, well, I mean, everyone goes there. And I did not put the sign up there knowing that happen chance would be that it is also almost the center on Central of drug use, homeless people. I drove around the block in the morning before the TV station got there, and I thought, oh my goodness, I certainly picked the right place to put this sign up. And I didn't get out of my car, and I will tell you this did not get on the air, but I put out a challenge to the mayor, the governor, and the head of the public education department to come stand under the sign across the street from the expo and walk a 1-block square. And I specifically said, I mean walk it, not drive it with your doors locked and your security people with you. I dare you to walk around this sign 1 block in every direction. I don't dare do it, but maybe you do. And if you do it, you'll see the state of affairs in New Mexico in this 1-block area. And we had homeless people, they were drugged out, and they were just staring at us and while it was being filmed. And Annalisa Pardo, I thought you did a good job. It was a 20-minute interview and it was 45 seconds on the air. But
Right.
I understand that.
Right. Well, so before, we'll get into the state economic development department responses, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put you on the spot a
Okay.
little bit
All right.
because at the Rio Grande Foundation,
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I hope you'll agree with me, we not only try to point out the problems, but propose specific ideas that could improve upon things. And you're certainly you've made a splash at pointing out some
Mm-hmm.
problems, specifically education and crime. Do you want to take a stab at maybe it doesn't have to be a specific law or something, but
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the things that you think might
Right.
move New Mexico in a more positive direction on
Right.
some of these issues?
Yeah. One of the reasons they kind of morphed into the new logo, slug line, signs, is taking a different stance than just stating that there is a problem. And it says on the billboards and it says on the website, let's work together at makenewmexicobetter.org. And there's, if I'm not answering your question, stop me, but in education, I'm going to take two subjects, education and the justice system, crime.
Right.
In education, I looked up, and this isn't my field of expertise, but I know how to Google. So I thought, well, how big's the budget? It's now just been passed, and it's going to in 2025. They've allocated just a hair over $10 billion for education in New Mexico. Well, I tend to look at things. I used to say to my wife, education is really sales. If you really want to, you have to sell someone in your classroom on the value of learning math, learning how to read, learning science. You have to show them that there is value in doing that. And if you can't sell them on that, then you're just making noises at the front of the blackboard. So I thought, well, having been in business my entire life, I thought, well, how do they decide who runs the school boards? And I know up in Rio Arriba County, our budget's around, we're a small population. By the way, the state of Connecticut is smaller than Rio Arriba County. Connecticut has 3.5 million people in it. Rio Arriba County has 40,000.
Right.
Now, I thought, well, okay, but $50 million is a lot of money. I've not run a $50 million company as successful as I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big business to be in charge of. And then you get down into Albuquerque, and it's going to be higher because the budget's higher. But Albuquerque at last read was over $2.2 billion school budget for APS, Albuquerque Public Schools. And I thought, now that's an enormous business. You start getting in the billions. What are the qualifications? So a simple 1-minute search, literally on Google, using the state's Gov website, said that you had to live in the school district that you were running in. And I do want to say that people who are on the school board do not get paid. So it comes under the heading of God bless them. They're doing their work for free. And that's serious volunteerism. But what are your qualifications to run 50, 100 million or billions of dollar business of education in your district? Well, you have to live where you're running for election. And I thought, well, okay, what do you have to know? Nothing. Do you have to have graduated from high school? Not particularly. Do you have to have a GED? Doesn't say you do. You do have to, after you've been elected, which I'm beginning to see as a popularity contest, not a qualification contest. If you run for office, I just got lost. All right.
We're talking about what specifically your ideas might
Right.
be.
Okay. Well, all right. Staying with the education. I'm going, well, in New Mexico, you have to take a course in order to train for your driver's license. Then you have to have take a driver's test. And I thought, okay, that makes total sense. You have to prove that you're qualified to drive a car before they allow you to drive a car. But in New Mexico, to serve on a Board of Education position, you have to take a 10-hour course, which is fairly new, only a few years ago. Did they have that? You have to take a 10-hour course. You do not have to pass a test. And oh, by the way, you don't take the course until after you're elected. So somewhere within the first year, you have to take a course that tells you what you need to know to be on the Board of Education in your district. And I thought that was kind of backwards.
Okay. Anything on crime? Crime's a little bit
crime's a big
of a
deal.
different issue. It's related to education though. So
it
if
is.
you improve the education scenario, then
Yeah.
you can also address crime. But
100%. I mean, I think, quite honestly, and that has nothing to do with the fact that my wife was a teacher. By the way, she taught the gifted and talented education program, the GATE program, so we know there's gifted and talented kids in school. The problem is there are not as many as there should be. But getting back to crime, I did the same, literally 5-minute research. What does the court.gov of New Mexico state as the requirements to be a magistrate judge? I understand, there's federal, there's this, there's that. But, we have so many counties. Off the top of my head, I want to say that I don't want to say because I don't have my note right in front of me. There's somewhere around between 50 and 80 magistrate courts in our rural communities, and those are the lower level courts. So I thought, well, what are the qualifications to be a magistrate judge? And I'll inject here, they don't serve as for free. They get paid a very, very handsome salary. It's based on a percentage of the higher court judges. And depending on what district you're in, I mean, you're in the $80,000 to $125,000 a year bracket, which is pretty good wages in New Mexico. So you must be qualified. Well, the qualifications stated on the government website are you must be 28 years old, 28 years of age. You must live in the district that you're running your election and plan to serve in. And to adjudicate all these court cases, you must have a GED. I somehow thought you had to be a lawyer or have some legal training, but only 2 districts in New Mexico require a judge to have any legal training, must be a bar qualified lawyer. And that's if you have over 200,000 people. Well, Las Cruces and Albuquerque are the only 2 places in New Mexico that have that population density, and the only 2 places that require a law degree. So again, I'm kind of thinking it's a popularity contest rather than a merit-based contest, because I know personally police in northern New Mexico, mid New Mexico, and southern New Mexico who say, and I'm also talking about game wardens because they're a part of law enforcement, they take criminals, and I say criminals, they've made the judgment that they had to arrest that person. They take him to the district court. The judge adjudicates and decides what's next, whether they appear here, there, whatever the dates are. Their complaints, and I know this is quite pervasive, their complaints are that the judges let the people go on their own recognizance too often. I can give you an example because I brought a disgraceful police blotter report from northern New Mexico. And a lady, a daughter, beat her mother with a baseball bat. Okay. Police had to come. They were called by some neighbor. Mm-hmm. They arrest the girl. They put her in the trooper's car. She proceeds to try and kick the windows out of the car. They take the mother to a hospital. The girl hurt herself, so they took her. They're putting their life on their line every day. I mean, I have the highest respect for teachers and the highest respect for law enforcement. They're thankless jobs. This particular gentleman I know took her back from the hospital, took her to the magistrate judge, and he let her go on her own recognizance. She just beat her mother with a baseball bat. And then 2 weeks later, she was brought in on another charge for disturbing the peace enough that the police were called, and the judge let her go on $250 bail. And this is the kind of thing, if you do any research or ask anyone in law enforcement, they see this all day. And they're so swamped with having to make arrests, because we lead the country in that, that sometimes they can't even get back to the court when they're needed because they're out on a fresh call. So then that person gets let go. And this happens, I mean, I've been here 40 years. It happens over and over and over again. And I'll tell you something. Once you've mopped the blood of a 9-year-old who died from a headshot inside a house of a man who worked for you, and his wife was shot in the neck and paralyzed, and turned out that the guy was a neighbor, and he broke into the house because the little girl had diabetes, and he knew she had needles. And this is 24 years ago. And
this happened in New Mexico?
Yeah, it happened in northern New Mexico to an employee of mine who was called and was hysterical, obviously. Went to the hospital. His wife recovered, thankfully. The daughter was buried. She was dead, and they had just come from church. Well, my friend, my employee, I didn't want him to have to go back to the house and see his daughter's blood on the kitchen floor. So I spent 2 hours mopping it up. And I'll tell you what, that's a game changer.
Sure.
That's reality.
Well, surprised we didn't see some ads 24 years ago, because that would be a very traumatic experience, I'm sure.
And I'm surprised that there hasn't been any improvement, because we're worse now than we were 24 years ago in crime. And I have documentation on the website. I think there's like 40 pieces of documentation. Each one of them, wherever possible, came from New Mexico's own statistics, which have us, I mean, people said, we're not the highest, we're not the worst. No, we don't want to think we are, but we actually are.
Right.
And it's all in writing. I don't make this up.
So I'm going to try, we'll call it a speed round here, because we are coming up on our limit when it comes to time. But first and foremost, New Mexico is a state that's been democratically controlled for nearly 100 years. Florida's been much more competitive for its statehood, certainly in recent memory, and more so a pretty safely red state. Talk about, just briefly, we don't need dissertations, but your thoughts on that.
Okay. When I was on the TV, they have their own Facebook, KRQE.
Correct.
All right. I looked at it. There were 1,200 comments. And I'm going to say, because you can check it yourself, but I'm going to say you'd be very, very safe to say that 80% of the people who made comments, who seemed to care about our state and our state of affairs, blamed Democrats. I'm bipartisan. I like to vote for the person that's most qualified. whether they're a judge or they're on the school board or they're governor. But what I see is that there's a lot of people. I don't know if they come out and vote, but they sure did comment that if you vote blue, this is what you get. That's what I saw. It's in writing on their Facebook page.
Okay. Do you disagree with that, or do you? I mean, it's
Well,
we're not the only state that performs poorly on education, but we are at the very bottom. We are a blue state, but
we've had Republicans for governors,
right,
and we didn't shine then either.
right.
I think that here's what I know, and this is a very quick, simple example. The rule book from the Department of Education on how to select Board of Education members was written in 1978. That's going on a half a century ago. They're still using the same rules and regs to select and to qualify Board of Education members. I think you could start there. And I have a feeling that there's 35 other areas that are kind of run the same way. We passed a rule, on water in 1921, and we're still using those compacts. We have rules for education that were made in 1978, and we're still using those. Same with the judge.
Right.
I think we got to really start over again. If I owned this business, quite honestly, if I owned this business, I would blame myself for my own failures. I would fire everyone because I would say that in the last 40 years, you haven't made any improvements. In the last 9 years, we've been dead last in America. That's a big statement. Dead last in the United States of America in education. So here's what I know. Every single thing that you have done for the last 9 years does not work. So you can't do them again next year and the year after. You can't throw more money at it and expect that it's going to get better, because every year we throw more money and every year we're still dead last.
Okay, well, Florida has very aggressive school choice.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we brought the Florida model to New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
It was picked up by Susana Martinez, the previous governor, a Republican, although hostile legislature.
Yeah.
Florida has done more on education. They're consistently ranked as one of the very top reform states when it comes to education, dating at least back to Jeb Bush. I'm assuming that some of those would be in your mind worthwhile, and I'm interested in hearing, did your wife ever teach in other states besides New Mexico? If so, did she have, how would she compare her experiences in the classroom? Because, our education system is definitely at the top of the list in terms of problems in our state.
Yeah. Dina taught in Harlem in the 70s and 80s. She was one of the first innovators. She has a PhD in early childhood movement and music, incorporating movement and music into learning. She never taught formal, math, science, and reading. Ask me that again, if you don't mind.
I was just asking about, your wife's experience with education in different states compared to New Mexico.
Right. So she has obviously acknowledged the same facts that I'm working on. But, Florida has charter schools. We have charter schools. It seems the charter schools are doing better within New Mexico. You'd know more about it than I do, than the regular public. I think it's a total disservice and disgraceful to have your education system, which is kind of the basis of how you learn how to think, how you learn how to make good decisions. Here's the fact. This is from the acting head director of the public education department for the state of New Mexico. In 2025, earlier in the year, she sent out a memo to everyone in the school system. And I can say it in one sentence. 80% of all eighth graders cannot read or do math at the eighth grade level. Now, they're going on to high school. They're not holding them back. They didn't hold them back in fourth grade when their statistics were worse.
Right.
There's some areas where there's only 14% can read or do math. So now we have, and I totally applaud the new concepts that the governor's put forth of early childhood care that's going to be free and free tuition. What I would say is there's not a whole lot of value in having free college if your eighth graders can't read or do math at an eighth grade level, and you know they're getting passed along. And as soon as they get in high school, they're fast-tracked to either quit and drop out or just to get them out of the school because they're holding back the rest of the class. Well, if 80% of them can't read or do math, probably not going to have a lot of people able to even read the application for getting free tuition to college. Maybe a liberal arts degree for free it's one thing. Maybe we need to have education for trade schools so that kids who are in that program where 80% can't meet standards, they have an opportunity to learn a trade. And then, if you have a job, you're less likely to do drugs and commit a crime because you're kind of busy 8 hours a day.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I am going to briefly point out that the governor's free childcare program is already in place. It started in 2022 for up to 400% of the federal poverty level, which is for a family of three about $107,000. She's just adding in the wealthiest last component of that. So you still think that's something that's worth doing?
No, I mean, if you're at a economic level that you don't need that kind of help, then why are you giving it to those people? Why aren't you taking whatever monies, and we've just increased our budget dramatically for 2025 for education alone. Why don't we take that money? And I know what I was going to say. Mississippi
yes,
dead last,
right?
Or 47th, 48th when I moved here with my wife in 40 years ago. Mississippi figured it out. Took them a long, long time. We're dead last for 9 consecutive years. They're not. They went from 32nd. They went from dead last to 32nd. They're up in 16 in some of the evaluations. Here's the simple thing. Why doesn't New Mexico send people to states that have figured it out? See if their Board of Education members require a high school diploma. Right. Maybe there's things they can learn. If I were running this business, I would go to my competitors, the ones that are successful, and see what they're doing. This is an open country. This is not hard stuff to figure out. This doesn't take a $10 million study. This takes 4 people who actually care and know how to get things done to go to 4 or 5 states and take notes and bring them back and say, oh my goodness, we haven't ever done this. And these people are doing it and they're successful, period.
All right. Well, we are just going to have to leave it there. Joe, sounds like we might want to have future conversations about some of these things. I should have noted that the Economic Development Department did an entire campaign on their social media page, citing your billboards and responding with some positive data. I tore some of that apart, and I believe most of it is worth tearing apart.
Here's what I know. Yep. The original billboards got 1,200 comments on the Facebook page.
Right.
What you mentioned, when I looked at it, they had 10.
Okay.
That says enough.
Fair enough. All right. Well, safe travels to Florida, and I'll look for your billboards. All right. One more thing.
One more thing.
It's okay.
This is important.
All right.
They thought I was going away. I've just started.
All right.
There's 9 more billboards going up, and starting in 3 weeks, there's going to be radio and TV PSA spots across New Mexico. So we're just starting, and all you have to do is go to makenewmexicobetter.org, and there's a little box there. And if you click on the box, it will automatically send a letter to the governor, the Board of Education, and 134 other elected leaders. And you don't have to write the letter. You don't have to put the email in. Click on the box. Automatically, over 100 elected leaders will get a statement that pretty much says, could we work a little harder together to make New Mexico better? Period.
All right. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointsnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.